Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Live at Frost Science. My name is Daniela Rihuela, and I am so excited to be hosting this session today because today we're going to be talking all around sharks, and we love sharks here at Frost Science. We have a special guest. Her name is Jillian Morris, and she is the founder and president of Sharks4Kids. She has spent thousands of hours in the field working and diving with sharks across the globe. She is a marine biologist, a shark conservationist, a scuba instructor, explorer, and educator. So, by combining her background in science and media, she has filmed numerous television shows and networks, appeared on Shark Week, which is amazing, and is a PADI ambassador diver. So she has also appeared in Scuba Diving Magazine's July 2016 Sea Hero and was awarded the inaugural SharkCon Shark Hero Award in 2017. Wow. And then on top of that, she is the author of Norman the Nurse Shark and a member of the prestigious Ocean Artist Society. Jillian, welcome to today's session. Are you there?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with everybody today all about sharks and really how we study these amazing animals.
That's awesome. So let me go ahead and I'm going to place us here. And welcome to today's virtual live of Frost Science. So tell us a little bit more about Sharks4Kids. What do you do and what are you going to tell us today?
Yeah, so Sharks4Kids, the goal is to create the next generation of shark advocates through education, outreach, and adventure. It was created because myself and my co-founders really believe that kids have a voice. They can make a difference. And if we can empower and inspire them to speak up, to realize how much they can do, then action happens and they can make change. And it's really, really powerful. So that's kind of the ultimate goal of Sharks4Kids. And we do that through virtual lessons, online materials, outreach programs, school visits, and also field trips. So it's kind of a three-tiered approach to really just ultimately get kids excited about sharks and help them realize that these animals are important, they're amazing, and kids can help save them.
I love that. And so Sharks4Kids, what gave you the inspiration for that? And what are you gonna, I know that you have some really cool imagery and video to show us today.
Yeah, so it's really came out of, I was traveling the world working as a researcher and a diver and filming and photographing and collected all these experiences and materials and was visiting schools, and as were my colleagues, and you have your own photos and videos, so you go in and you show kids and they're excited about seeing sharks and meeting a person that does this, and so just it really was born out of that. Like, how can we then take that and create resources for teachers, for students, so even kids in Colorado that have never seen the ocean, they can get excited and they can connect and realize not only how important sharks are, but how important and connected we are to the oceans, no matter where we live. And today, you know, I'm going to talk about a lot of our focus for kids is science, like giving them facts instead of the fear that they're going to see on the internet, TV, and movies, and all this stuff. And so to really highlight the research around the world that's being done, this is how we learn these amazing facts about sharks and how we can share it and hopefully inspire the next generation of shark scientists as well. And, you know, especially young women, young girls, that this is for you as well. This is a career, this is a field that if you're passionate and interested, please, you know, follow your heart, explore this. This is for you too.
Perfect. So I'll let you lead the way. For those of you that are tuning in, please feel free to share any questions on the Facebook questions, and I'll go ahead and feed them over to Jillian during the session. Go for it.
Great. Thank you. All right. All right, so thank you everybody for joining today. I am a marine biologist. I've worked all over the world on various projects, and I've also done a lot of media work for TV shows, books, magazines, and then running Sharks4Kids, so taking kids out in the field. So this is just kind of a quick intro into what my life with sharks looks like. And when I tell people I work with sharks, sometimes they say, wow, that sounds amazing. A lot of times they say, oh, that sounds scary. So I like to show this first video. It's really just to kind of show you, these are sub-adult lemon sharks, so you can kind of think of them like teenagers, and how close they get. All right, they're not biting, they're not attacking me, they're just swimming up, checking out the camera, and moving around. This applies to bigger sharks as well, like the great hammerhead. I live in Bimini in the Bahamas, and we're very lucky that in the winter months, these animals migrate to the little island, and we spend a lot of time with them, underwater diving with them, observing them. You can see the camera in my hands. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we're using, but this is just to really show you that we can get very close to these animals. It's about respect for them, and you'll notice, you know, a 12 or 13-foot shark swimming by not bothering you at all. So there's two aspects that I'll focus on today. Same animal, tiger sharks in both images. Top right is Joker. She's a favorite in Bimini now. She's a regular on the hammerhead site. Bit smaller than most of the hammerheads, but comes in, gets right in the mix, called Joker because of the scar you can kind of see on the left side of her mouth. And that's one method. I'm going to talk about the cameras that we're using. So you can see I've got quite a large piece of equipment in my hands. Scuba diving. Another kind of technique or approach is actually catching and tagging sharks. So I'll talk a little bit about both of those, the equipment that we use, and really the ultimate goal of why do we do this? Obviously, sharks are amazing. It's really interesting, but it's much bigger and much more important than that. Now, when people talk about shark science, right? Maybe you've heard people talk about shark tagging, tracking. You've watched Shark Week shows or different programs on Animal Planet or Nat Geo. All right, so it can mean a lot of different things. It's really sort of our method for studying these animals, but it varies from species, location. You might be the field, you might be the lab. So today I'm just going to show you some of the pieces of the equipment that we use that are pretty important. There's obviously a lot more than this, just highlighting a few of the things that I've done, the work that I've done and the equipment that I've used to really understand what shark science looks like. Now, in order to study sharks out in the field, we have to catch them. So if you think about, if you've been fishing before, it's a little bit different than that. For most of the work I've done, we've either used long lines, which are exactly how they sound, a long line with several different hooks. Not the commercial long lines used for fishing that are miles long. Ours usually maybe have about 15 to 20 hooks, a much smaller set. We check them frequently, depending on where we are in the species. 90 minutes to 4 hours is the check time. We also use drum lines, which are a single weighted line with a hook and line, so it allows the animal to swim when it's caught. Again, we're going to check that every 90 minutes to 4 hours, depending on where we're working, the depth, the species that we believe we're going to catch or we're hoping we're going to catch. And once we have an animal, we bring it next to the boat. So here's a bull shark in Bimini when I was working with the shark lab over there. And you can't see the line in her mouth, but she does have a line, and everything that we do from start to finish, the equipment that's used and how we do it is designed specifically for sharks. Right? The idea is to minimize stress on the animal. And no, I don't mean the sharks are stressed out because they've got a big exam or a big sporting match, right? Or maybe they have to do a public speaking engagement. They're stressed, chemicals in their body react when they're caught. And so we want to minimize that stress. And so the hooks are designed, the whole line equipment I just described, designed for working specifically with sharks. And once we have the animal, we do secure it next to the boat. So there's going to be a tail, a rope around the tail. And we're going to do what's called a workup. And this is what scientists all over the world, no matter what species they're working with, it's specific information or data they want to collect. It's very similar to when you go to the doctor, you get a physical or a checkup. And everyone on the team knows their job knows exactly what they're gonna do. And the idea is we do this as quickly as possible, collect our data, and let the shark go, right? So they can go off and do their sharky thing. Right, so you'll notice on this bull shark a measuring tape. Right? So we take measurements from the tip of the shark's nose to the tip of its tail, it's the total length, the tip of the shark's nose to the start of the tail fin, and the tip of the nose to where the top and the bottom part of the tail fin meet, except on things like nurse sharks, because they don't actually have a lower part of their tail fin. We may also measure around the shark in different locations, sort of where they're starting where the shark's armpits would be, if they had armpits. And this can help us determine the health of the animal. We can also figure out estimates on weight. This is a very large bull shark. We are not going to try and bring it in our boat and measure it or weigh it. We're gonna leave it in the water where it belongs, it can breathe, as comfortable as possible, collect our measurements and let it go. If it was a slightly smaller shark, we do have scales and setups, we can bring them in the boat to weigh them, but not for an animal this size. Next thing we do is we'll actually take a little piece of tissue from the shark's dorsal fin, that trailing edge, kind of the end of the fin. This is similar to clipping your fingernails or cutting your hair, right? And what it gives us is the same thing I would get from your fingernails or your hair. It's DNA, that internal name tag that makes each one of us unique. We can also figure out who you're related to, right? If you've ever done a family tree, right? Maybe you've been home and working on some projects and decided to figure out great uncles and great grandmas. Well, we're not doing that far with the sharks because families are not actually hanging out together. Parents don't take care of their babies, so they're not together as a little family. But we can figure out if we've ever caught their mother, brother, dad, sister, right, from that little piece of tissue. It's sent off to a lab and they actually look specifically at that DNA. We can also take that little piece of tissue, a muscle sample, a little piece of tissue just below the dorsal fin from the muscle, and blood, and figure out what the shark's been eating. So if you've ever heard somebody say you are what you eat, this applies to sharks. Right? So we're looking at stable isotopes, which is a fairly complex term, but ultimately it's sharks are what they eat. There are certain things, elements, example, carbon, present at certain amounts in different animals. And by looking at that, we can figure out the shark's diet. All right, it'd be like if I clipped your fingernails and knew that last month you guys were living off pizza, maybe the month before you were all about spaghetti every night for dinner. Right? Now, obviously, the sharks are not eating pizza and spaghetti, but really it helps us determine which ecosystem, where they hang out, what's their favorite restaurant, right? Because sharks are not always on the top of the food chain. So what role do they play within this particular habitat or ecosystem? So already, just taking a few measurements and a small piece of tissue, we've learned a lot about this animal. Now, before we release it, we are going to tag the shark. And this is something you may have heard of. Maybe you've seen people talk about it, seen it on TV. There are different types of tags. Now, this first one is something you may be familiar with if your cat or dog is microchipped. Right? Maybe you've heard your parents talk about that, or those of you watching that have pets, your pet is microchipped in case they get lost. And it's a tiny little chip, about the size of a grain of rice, and the vet would have injected it just between the shoulder blades. We inject it just below the dorsal fin of the shark. You can see that little chip down at the bottom. We call them pit tags. And this will stay in the shark, and that scanner you see, when we catch a shark, we wave it all around the dorsal fin. If a number comes up, we can look in our data book and say, wow, we caught the shark 5 years ago. It's grown. Or there's no number, then we're going to put a tag in. Or if it's a number we don't have in our data book, maybe we can start reaching out to other scientists that use these tags and connect with them and let them know that we've caught one of their sharks. Other tags go on the outside of the shark, and these are called rototags. You may have seen one on the ear of a cow or a pig or a goat. They're used for farm animals. They are cattle tags. Now, sharks do have ears, but they're inside the head. So piercing the ear, not very easy. So we pierce the fin. And on the back side, there's an email or a phone number. So say a diver was underwater with their camera and they saw a shark. They could take a photo and contact the scientists and let them know the location, send the photo, or if somebody else catches the shark, they can let us know. But if we catch the shark, which with all of these cases, catching the shark again is really the ultimate goal, what we call recaptures, because then we can take all of our data again. We can remeasure the shark, see if they're in a new location, just like the doctor sees if you're how tall you are, if you've grown from year to year.
Hi, Jillian. So this is amazing. I had never seen the full process regarding shark tagging. And I'm wondering, with your group, do you know around how many sharks you have tagged so far?
So me personally, I've worked on a lot of different projects all over the world for about 18 years now, so hundreds of sharks. It really depends on, I mean, some days we go out and I've done a pit project, which is actually putting those little pit tags in juvenile lemon sharks and newborn lemon sharks with the Shark Lab, and you might catch over 100 in a single night. You fish overnight for them. Other days you go out and you don't catch any sharks at all. So it really depends. I mean, that's why it is called fishing, right? Not just catching. So it really depends on the location, the type of shark, or if we're trying to find a very specific shark, like a female tiger shark over a certain length. So it really depends, but I've tagged hundreds of sharks.
That's great to hear. And so the pictures that we're looking at right now, do you know what type of shark that is? And you mentioned earlier about their diet. Do you know anything about what's the normal diet for that type of shark?
Yeah, so these are actually all nurse sharks, so very common to Florida and the Bahamas where I live. If people have been diving before or snorkeling in Florida or the Bahamas or the Caribbean, really, you've probably seen this shark. Very, very common. They have a pretty amazing diet. They eat conch and lobster.
Wow.
Nurse sharks, yeah, right? And they can suck a conch, that big snail, out of its shell, which is pretty impressive. And they do have teeth. I often hear people say, oh, well, nurse sharks don't have teeth. They absolutely do have teeth. They're just tiny and they have hard crushing plates. So they'll crush things like that lobster after they suck it out from under a ledge.
That's amazing. I didn't know that their diet was so varied. We had a question actually from Mari regarding what kind of foods are sharks eating. Do you see anything that's usually a little bit like rare or out of the ordinary when you're doing this tagging process?
Yeah, I mean, we don't get the instant answer for what they're eating unless you do work with like a tiger shark. They can throw up their own stomachs, which is pretty incredible. And sometimes they do that to kind of clean out bones or shell bits, because tiger sharks have a really diverse diet. They eat things like birds, sea snakes, sea turtles, lots of different fish. And if they happen to kind of invert their stomach, sometimes what they just had comes up and we can say, whoa, all right, we know what you just had for lunch. But usually it's not instant, and it really varies. I mean, people say sharks are mindless eating machines and they just, eat everything. Absolutely not true. They have varied diets depending on the type of shark, how often they eat, the size of the prey items, everything.
And similar to that, there's so much interest regarding sharks' food. Mari was asking, do different sharks have different favorite foods?
Absolutely. So they're also designed to eat different things. If you think of a whale shark, they filter feed. So they have a giant mouth. They do have teeth, but they suck in plankton, all right, and filter it just like a whale. If you think about the cookie cutter shark, which is quite small, they'll swim up to other animals and just take a cookie cutter chunk out, right? So if people have been at home baking, pretty handy animal to have around if you had some help in the kitchen. But yeah, it looks like somebody took a little cookie cutter shape out of the animal. So if we look at their teeth, it can actually tell us a lot about their diet. Because it's sort of their built-in silverware designed for the prey items that they feed on. All right, so we'll look at just a few more tags. Now, technology is pretty incredible, and so are the tools that we can use for actually studying sharks. So these are acoustic tags. And acoustic tags mean it makes a noise. You can think of like the tag has its own unique ringtone. Now we can't hear it, the shark can't hear it, but there are special devices. We can put this either in the shark or on the shark. So on the shark, you'll see that here at the base of that great hammerhead's dorsal fin, we can attach it, and that device sticking out of the sand is a receiver. Think of it like an underwater ear. Now these are throughout the Bahamas, all up the eastern seaboard, all around Florida, and all they do is that little computer in that waterproof case is listening for these tags. Now that tag might be on a turtle, a shark, a tuna. It's used for a lot of different types of animals. And within a set distance, when an animal passes, it's going to record things like the date, the time of day, the water temperature, and the animal. So this can tell us, does a shark pass by once or a tuna pass by once and that's it? We never see them again? Or is that shark there every day or 4 times a week? And are they hanging out with the same sharks? So it really can tell us a little bit about habitat use, how much time this particular animal is spending in sand bottom versus maybe a seagrass bed or a coral reef, and if they're hanging out with their buddies, right? So some of their social behavior.
Gillian, Julie has a question. She wants to know about the tags a little bit more. Do they come off naturally over time, or do they stay on forever?
It depends. So the little pit tag is going to stay in the shark. They're good and active for about 15 to 20 years. That's internal. Shark's not feeling it, it's not affecting them. External tags, it really depends. I'm going to show you a couple of other ones that do eventually come off, and there's 2 different methods for how they come off. This internal one may be eventually passed from the shark if we do put it internally. These external ones we do find eventually come off. They are attached with a dart, but eventually they do either migrate through the fin. We've seen them kind of pop off, or if it's an animal that you have access again, you may just cut it off, right? So you're removing it as well. When I say inside the shark, when you flip a shark over, it goes into this sleep-like state called tonic immobility. And this is a pretty amazing tool for us to be able to actually insert these tags. This is a natural anesthesia. If you've ever had surgery or you know somebody who has, or you get Novocaine at the dentist, this is a bull shark flipped over. We make an incision, slide that acoustic tag in, sort of the abdomen cavity, stomach cavity, pretty close to the skin. There are no vital organs. We're not affecting, it's not going that far into the body. Couple of stitches, same equipment that if you've had stitches before, same quality, needles, thread, everything. Couple of stitches, flip the shark over, off it goes. And these now for about 10 years are giving us that signal. So if this does stay in the shark, for up to 10 years, we're going to be able to get that data.
So we have a question from Natalie. She's asking, is it hard to tag the sharks?
It can be. It really depends on the species. So, and what type of tag. So everyone really practice, you practice, you work as a team, that's important. The little pit tags, very easy. The Rototag, just a quick punch and in. These tags you definitely want to practice. I don't do this as much, so I'm not as, I'm not as quick, but I do have friends, Fells, who she did her PhD at the Shark Lab. She could do it in about 90 seconds. All right, that's pretty incredible. Incision, pop the tag in, stitch it up, and done. So yeah, but obviously the animal needs to be still to do this. So if an animal is moving around, that's why we kind of secure them with lines. We don't want them thrashing around. We don't want to put the tag in the wrong spot. Again, it's really, designed to make it as easy as possible. But weather, say it's really rough and there's waves coming up over the boat, depending on where we are, we may have to call it. We may not be able to work with that animal. We also assess the health of the animal. If it seems stressed, we let it go. We don't want to cause any more. We won't tag that animal. We will just let it go.
And along the lines of that, you don't want the animal to be stressed. Vero is asking if it hurts.
So there's a couple of different thoughts about this. The idea in the dorsal fin, the fins are made of cartilage. That's what's inside. That's what the shark's whole skeleton is made of. And most of the things that I've read, people I've talked to, experiences watching the shark, when we attach a tag on the fin and they don't react, that tells you, especially if we're actually putting holes in the fin, that tells you that there's not the nerve endings for feeling inside that fin. So that's why you'll see a lot of it, like the tags are designed to go on that dorsal fin. We're working in that area to have minimal impact on the shark. Really, the closest thing I've kind of heard talked about or reaction wise is kind of like if you had an ear piercing or a shot at the doctor's office. Yeah, it pinches quickly, but it doesn't last. The pain doesn't last. And so there's two sides. I mean, people think that there's no feeling at all, that they don't feel any of this. And then there are studies that support that they do. So kind of studies on both end of it. But from what I've seen is you would expect a much greater reaction. Certainly in this position, the shark's not feeling it. They're not reacting at all because they're in that sleep-like state. All right. So the last two tags I'm going to show you are types of satellite tags, which means they actually send a message up to satellites. So if you have satellite internet or TV at home, kind of the same technology. And PSAT pop off satellite tags. So this one is going to pop off the shark and float to the surface, or the skate in the top photo. And then that antenna you see is going to ping up the information to a satellite. And it can record the depth, which is pretty cool. So say we have a species that dives to thousands of feet and then maybe comes up to the surface at night to feed or hunt. We can see that once that tag pops off and sends that information up to the satellite. And there's newer versions of that. Scientists are always, this is from Dr. Dean Grubbs, scientists are always developing and working on new methods to make this easier on the sharks, improve the data that we're getting, and make it easier to get the tags back. So this is that same kind of, these are PSAT tags, different attachment points, different shape. So I always like to tell people or kids that are watching, if you're interested in building things, maybe you don't necessarily want to just study sharks, but you really like to build things and are really creative, maybe you'll end up designing a new type of tag to help us study marine life, not just sharks. The last tag I'll show you is a spot tag. So another type of satellite tag. This one is attached to the dorsal fin of something like a tiger shark, a mako, a white shark, something that comes to the surface. And if you've followed the Guy Harvey Research Institute, their tracking website, or if you've seen OSearch, they have an app. This is some of the tags that they're using. When the animal comes to the surface, there's a little sensor on that tag that touches the air and then transmits a GPS location. Right? That green thing you see is a computer, and those are batteries. And it's very similar to when you go out and use your phone to get directions or count your steps or track your run. It's that GPS technology. Now, obviously, the shark's not trying to find a new restaurant. It's just swimming around doing its thing, and we're able to get a glimpse into its life. This is really important for migratory species. Some of these animals travel thousands of miles, right? And we would never be able to follow them in a boat or swim after them. So this tag really tells us a lot about their life and their journey.
Jillian, and as you're talking about how much it tells you about the life and the journey of the shark, Maddie was asking, and I think you mentioned it a little bit previously, like how do you figure out if the sharks are hanging out with the same sharks?
So we can do that through observation. So watching, and if you see the same sharks hanging out, if you're diving with them or in a place that you can observe them on a regular basis. But also, if you download that receiver, that listening device, after a certain amount of time, scientists will pull it out of the water, they'll plug it into their computer, and they're going to download all that information. And if every day you see the same two sharks hanging out at the same time, you're just getting those pings from them and they're in the area every single day, all right, maybe there's some social behavior happening there. Now, research done in Bimini, the Shark Lab did show that juvenile lemon sharks have their best buddies, which is pretty incredible. And it was done through using these tags, but also observation, watching the same sharks hunt together, hide out together. So a lot of times, we have this idea that all sharks are kind of solitary animals. Yes, some of them are. They're very solitary, but there are species that are highly social. Something like those lemon sharks when they're little, which is pretty amazing to think that little baby sharks have best buddies just like we do. One of my favorite facts. So this is just kind of placing that tag with this big, beautiful tiger shark next to the boat. You'll see she's not thrashing around. And we're making holes in the fin to attach that tag. And eventually that tag, the satellite tag, will migrate through the fin and move off. And when I said we get an update, you see this green dot? That's where the tiger shark got the tag. And we use Google Earth, and every green dot you see after is when this 9-foot tiger shark came to the surface. So she was tagged in the fall of 2016 for a project. This was actually featured on Shark Week, and we tagged her there, and she, every green dot after, you can see she headed towards South America pretty quickly. So that's not a large tiger shark at 9 feet. She traveled quite a far distance, and you'll see it's going to go yellow and then red. We can actually set the track time. So do we want to watch it for a few months, a year, 2 years? Our goal was to hope that these tags would stay on for about 4 years to really understand the migration patterns of these female tiger sharks.
That is amazing. I love that you can see all that tracking. Jillian, so the previous video that you showed the shark was pretty calm. Julie had a question around how can you tell when the shark is stressed?
It depends on the species, and you'll notice I've said that a lot because there are over 500 different species of shark, and they vary in size, shape, habitat use, and reaction to different stressors. So we can look for blotchiness, kind of a change in skin color. We can look at the gills, if the breathing has slowed, an obvious things like that, if they're kind of not moving, rigid kind of feeling in the fins. So these are observations, and it really depends on the type of shark. But whatever species that we're working with, we're going to make sure we want to know that ahead of time so that we can assess their health and how they're doing to make sure we want to minimize our impact on these animals. The goal of this work is conservation, to better understand them. We don't want to be harming sharks. That's not our intention. That's why everything is designed so specifically for working with these animals.
Definitely, and we love that. So we just saw the tracking, and you said the last several years. So Maddie was asking, how are the tags charged?
So the batteries, if you go back here, so if you look at that photo, you can kind of see the silver bits at the bottom. Those are batteries that are built in. And we can program the tag to record at set intervals. So it's not constantly firing that data. And say the shark is underwater for 2 or 3 months and doesn't come to the surface, it's not transmitting. So those batteries don't have to fire. So by being able to program that and set it for a specific amount of information that we want, we can control the battery life. Now, does it always last as long as we want or work correctly? It's not perfect. But for the most part, we do have a good idea of how these are going to last. And through trial, and there's new versions of this that have been developed as well, different shapes, again, to minimize the swimming impact on sharks. So it's constantly evolving to be better for the animals and to help us learn even more. All right, so just to finish off with some camera work as well, another really important tool. Obviously, it's very fun to take photos. If you like taking photos just even on your iPhone, you can take it underwater now. So it's really amazing, but it's also a powerful tool for telling their story. So this is a subadult lemon shark in the mangroves. Really important habitat. They'll move in and out. There's lots of food. When they're slightly smaller, it's a nursery area, so it's a safe place. No large predators in there, lots of food. Really safe place for them to learn how to be a shark. And our cameras go in special cases. You can see that sort of gray and black thing I have there. Actually made of metal or plastic to keep the camera nice and dry and safe. And it is. We can do it either very shallow water, or this is using scuba diving equipment. Again, lots of beautiful photos and videos, but we can also tell their story. We can record behaviors, certain individuals. We can explain science. So I showed you that photo of the surgery up close, but here now is actually filming it. So explaining what the process looks like And just like I'm explaining to you, what does shark science actually look like? What is involved? What does tracking mean? So having our cameras there is really, really important for telling this story, the work that scientists are doing to better understand these animals, what equipment they're using, the process, and why it's so important. We can also use the cameras to identify different individuals. So Bimini, I mentioned already, some of you maybe have been over there to dive, but it's become world famous for these great hammerheads. And we can use our photos to tell them apart, recognize individuals. Divers can also contribute their photos. The Shark Lab has a massive project to study these animals. They're named, they're tagged, so pretty fun. Bottom left is Atlas. Bottom middle is Amphitrite, and the bottom right's my favorite animal on the planet, Miss Scylla. So yeah, Greek gods and goddesses names. But so our cameras can help us identify, and this isn't just sharks. You may have seen people talk about whales, like humpback whales, the unique patterns on their fluke fin, or dolphins as well. So cameras are allowing us to tell individuals apart.
I was going to ask you if you had a favorite shark or animal, so you just answered my question. While we're on the topic of hammerheads, since I see them here, we had a question more specifically to Frost Science that maybe you could help us answer it regarding, we have 2 hammerhead sharks at Frost Science, and Kiefer, who's a marine science student, was asking if hammerheads get along with each other.
So it depends on the species. Do you guys have scalloped hammerheads there?
I would have to double check with our husbandry team.
I think it's probably a scalloped hammerhead. They tend to be the ones you do see in facilities. So scalloped hammerheads actually can be quite social. If you've seen images, those incredible images of hundreds of hammerheads together, places like Cocos and Galapagos, where they come in, they're schooling together. It's for mating purposes. They're finding a mate, they're coming in. So yes, they can get along with each other in that area. Now the great hammerheads, the reason Bimini is so unique is normally these are a fairly solitary animal. But in Bimini, we've had up to 11 different great hammerheads on a single dive, which is incredible. And really, there's nowhere else in the world that's been discovered where you can dive with that many great hammerheads in shallow water. So pretty remarkable. It's why it's such a special spot. Sadly, you're looking at a critically endangered species. So the work being done to study them, to better understand them, is really, really important, because this is an area that for several months of year, scientists have access to these animals. They can document it, they can catch, they can tag them, and learn about where they're going before, after, and understand them a bit better to get larger protections. And this is kind of what I was gonna finish with, is the Bahamas is a shark sanctuary, so it's illegal to catch and kill these animals there. They swim 50 miles from Bimini to Florida, not protected, right? So there's large expanses of the ocean where these animals are not protected. It's also difficult to police that. So it's really important to understand where they're going, where they're spending their time, habitat use, in order to put better laws in place to protect them.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that message, because it's so important. And throughout all of this and seeing all of these beautiful imagery about all of these amazing creatures, just to confirm, yes, our hammerheads are scalloped. Got that. And while we're on the topic of hammerheads, Elise is asking, how fast can a hammerhead shark swim?
It really depends. I think they've been clocked at anywhere from cruising at like 10 to 15 miles per hour. Again, it really depends on, the great hammerhead is the largest species, but then you also have bonnet heads, which are the smallest. Also a species found in Florida that sometimes people think are baby hammerheads. Nope, they're full grown, about 3.5 feet, pretty amazing, but they do look like little baby hammerheads. So it really depends on the type of hammerhead we're talking about.
And you mentioned it earlier. Can you pinpoint the shark again? What was your favorite in
Down
this
at the
picture?
bottom right, you can see she's got a notch in her dorsal fin, that top fin. Not sure what that came from. And Scylla, actually, I dove with for the first time in 2015. She showed up in Bimini, and her original name was Biteback because she had a big bite chunk out of her back near her caudal fin. So not the most creative name, but at the time that's what she was called. And then she left. She was with us for, I think, 2 seasons, and then she left to go to Tiger Beach. So people who may have died with her, she's got very unique markings on her underside. But amazing, she returned to Bimini this winter, so we got to spend a lot of time with her. So I was really happy to see her back. And her injury is healing. That fin is kind of healed up. It's not open flap anymore, and she's doing really well. So just I've had a lot of really incredible moments. Really, really amazing animal. I actually teared up the first time I was in the water with her when she'd come back, because I really love this shark. She's incredible. So yeah, you do see their unique personalities. And I feel like when you say that to people, they're like, what? Sharks have personalities? But they do. Some are bold, some are shy. And you watch their approach to the bait box or to divers, and sometimes even if they're in the distance, just how they're swimming towards you, you don't even have to see them clear. You know who it is. You know what shark it is, their behavior, and I think that's amazing to have that kind of understanding with an animal that's not your dog or cat at home.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I would love to have that experience. It sounds amazing to be able to connect with these amazing creatures. So as we know, when you're going to observe and work with sharks or any creatures, you have to be careful because you are in their home. Are there any tips or anything that you would say in order to kind of demystify these myths that sharks are dangerous and can be very aggressive?
So yeah, sharks really need a good PR team. All right, there's a lot of misinformation out there. We hear monster, man-eater, killer shark, and I'm not even just talking about crazy movies, I'm talking about news articles. And we hear a lot of misinformation, but shark bites are extremely rare, extremely rare. On average, about 5 people die from shark bites in the world each year. 5. Think about that. Think about how many millions of people, not currently, but how many millions of people go in the ocean every single day. And one of the things that's to remember is every time we slip in the water on scuba snorkeling is we are in their world. These are wild animals. I love sharks, but they deserve my respect every second I am with them. And I never forget that. These are big, beautiful predators that have been around in some form for over 400 million years. They are very good at being ocean predators. Right? And so we give them their space, we observe them, and we're able to have these incredible interactions and to learn from them. But it really is all about respect. You won't see we don't try to ride the shark, we're not wrestling it, we're not grabbing them underwater. Yes, when we are tagging them, we have them next to the boat, we are handling them, but we're doing it as quickly as possible. And it's not while we're underwater in their space. We sort of have them right there, contained, collect our data, and we let them go. So I think the biggest thing is have respect for them. And if you are going to dive or snorkel, go with an operator that also respects the animals. They're knowledgeable, and you're going to have a much better experience. You're going to learn about the sharks. In Bimini, we work with the Bimini Scuba Center. They support local research, conservation, and education. So not only are their dive team love these animals and work with them every day for 4 months, they also support bringing the community together and divers from around the world to really learn about these animals and be part of studying them and protecting them and teaching the next generation how important they are. All right, so I'm just going to finish up with one last really cool camera system. Sometimes we put the sharks to work, and maybe you've seen different versions of this on Shark Week. My husband actually does a lot of filming for Shark Week shows, and they've used different forms of this, or on Nat Geo as well, and it's a fin camera. And they've been around for quite a while in different forms to capture the life of animals, also called critter cams, animal-borne cameras. And this one attaches to the fin, and it's got a magnesium strip on it. And magnesium corrodes, and we know the rate that it corrodes, so we can actually set it for a specific amount of time and use a certain size magnesium. So this camera goes on, stays on the shark, few hours, up to 48 hours. Some of the newer ones have night vision in them, which is really incredible. I think Shark Cam was the show on Shark Week where they have that robot that actually with the camera that follows the shark. Really, really incredible. They followed some bull sharks in Bimini. Absolutely amazing. And ultimately, it's like you're in a video game and you're the shark. So we can watch this footage and see, where does the shark go? Who are they spending their time with? Right? These ones might hang around the dive for a bit, and the camera was placed on by a diver and pulled off by a diver. But if the diver can't pull it off, if you look back, when it pops open, I think it kind of looks like barbecue tongs or kitchen tongs that attach it. That antenna goes up to the surface, and we can actually use another antenna to track it and get the camera back. So hopefully we can see that footage and see, you know, did they eat something? Did they chase something? Did they get chased? Again, all of this is to really learn about the lives of these animals, right? Because if we're diving or snorkeling with them, we only get a tiny glimpse. So all of these tools allow us to get a much broader understanding of where they go, what they do, why they do it, who they're hanging out with. Really lets us kind of spy on these animals and for the purpose of better understanding them.
A couple of people are asking, they're not quite clear from the picture of what kind of shark is the one in the image right now.
That is a great hammerhead.
Great hammerhead.
Yeah, because it's kind of on its sides. If you can't see that cephalofoil, that big head, yeah, it's kind of hard to understand. It looks really strange, but this is a great hammerhead.
And Elisa's asking about hammerheads. Why do they have a weird shaped head?
So hammerheads are one of the more younger species of sharks. And younger, I mean, been around about 20 million years. But that head, if you see, let me go back to see if you can see it a bit better. So let's talk about, there you go. So that cephalofoil has quite a few like reasons why it's there and why it's so important. So sharks have incredible senses, but hammerheads are kind of like super sharp. First off, positioning those eyes out on the end of that head. You might think they don't have very good vision because of that. They have excellent vision. So the position out on the side, and then you saw the S-shaped swimming. They're seeing completely around them. Yeah, right in front of their nose, if there's a piece of fish, they've got that kind of blind spot. But ultimately, in a distance, they're seeing all around them, right? So super powered vision. Right? Sharks have similar parts to their eyes like ours. They do not have poor vision like you might have heard. Also, sharks have sometimes referred to as their sixth sense. They have electroreceptors. Looks like little black dots on the face of the shark. It looks like the shark hasn't shaved, or they have freckles, and those are filled with a gel-like substance that can actually detect heartbeats of other animals, electrical pulses. So as that hammerhead is scanning the bottom, it's sort of a built-in metal detector, right? And instead of looking for buried treasure or lost jewelry, it's looking for lunch, like a stingray buried in the sand. It's hiding out, the shark's not seeing it, but when it gets close enough, it can actually feel that heartbeat. So with that large cephalofoil, there's more surface area, more space for more of those receptors. Right, another super powered sense. Their nostrils, their nares are also spread out. So they can use those to kind of actually locate where a scent is coming from. So it gives them a larger range to work with when they're underwater and trying to figure out exactly where that smell is coming from. Right? Just think about if all of a sudden you started smelling chocolate chip cookies in your house, all right, you're going to sniff around. It's probably coming from the kitchen, right? But imagine if it was you were outside and you were trying to figure out what house in the neighborhood or what yard had barbecue, or you'd be kind of sniffing around. It would take us longer. Our nostrils are right close together, so we don't get as wide a range of sniffing capability. So really makes them a super powered shark.
Definitely a super powered shark. I can see that. Paulina asked about whether sharks have tails. So I was wondering if maybe you could pinpoint, now that we're looking at a couple of images of sharks, a couple of the body parts.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at, actually, let me stop sharing here for just a second. Let's see here. And I will come back up to you guys. All right, so I've got my little shark assistant here. So we've got the cephalofoil, all right, there. You have, oops, let's see if this is gonna let me do this in the background. You have pectoral fins. You can think of those like the arms of the shark or the steering wheel. You have a dorsal fin. Right? They'll have one or two of those. This one only has the one, not always, this one doesn't even have gills, so it would have a problem breathing. We have the caudal fin, which is the tail fin. That's the top and bottom part. Anal fin, pelvic fins underneath. All right, so, and then the head, the mouth, you would have the nares, the nostrils, the eyes out on the side, the teeth, and normally the shark would have gill slits right here. So this guy's gonna have a tough time breathing. Let me just go back to the screen just to finish off one more, let's see. See if you can see yeah, so you can kind of see on the bottom right image, those lines on the side of the shark, or here, if we go back to the lemon shark, right in front of that pectoral fin, you can see those lines. Those are the gills as well. So yes, they do have tail fins, also called the caudal fin.
That is amazing. I love being able to see it with the plushie. Thank you. So we have a couple more questions. Sailor H8 was asking if there are some sharks that are endangered species.
Sadly, about 25% of all sharks and rays, and this was a slide that I was going to show you guys, is yeah, about 25% of all sharks and rays are sort of their flat shark cousins, are threatened with extinction. Right, so you can see the status. You may have heard there's a group called the IUCN, and they assess the health of populations of these animals, not just sharks and rays, animals in general around the world. And when I mentioned earlier, the great hammerhead last year was an endangered species. Now, 2020, it has been listed as critically endangered. Right? They're targeted for their fins. They're caught as bycatch, which means people are fishing for one thing, they accidentally catch something else. They're also caught for sport, considered a prize game fish. But sharks are also caught for their meat. They are consumed. People all around the world eat shark. The oil from their liver is used to make lipstick, lotion, makeups. So you can check if you see squalene in the back of your products, that is shark liver oil. Also cartilage is used to make vitamins and pills. You might see shark liver oil or shark cartilage pills at GNC, Target, Walgreens. So sadly, yeah, many of these species, and if we don't do, this is the why. This is why we study them, why we develop these techniques, this camera equipment, is because you've probably seen this number, right? And it's kind of a range. It's estimated 73 million to about 273 million sharks that humans kill each year for those reasons that I talked about. Yeah, this is the big scary number. And remember at the beginning I said about 5 humans die from shark bites each year. This is the other number, right? This is the big scary number. And it's why we study these animals. It's why we have all this special equipment, because you know, each species is different as well. If we know one thing about a shark, it doesn't necessarily apply to all the others. And you're talking about shallow water species that live thousands of feet below the surface that we know very little about, or every year new species are being discovered, which is amazing. But overall is that message of we need to protect our oceans and the animals that live there. And so these are the tools that we're using to study one kind of specific animal in order to try and help them survive, because sharks keep our oceans healthy, clean, balanced, and that affects all of us, no matter where we live, whether we're on the beach or 1,000 miles away. We are connected to the ocean, to the water every single day. So that's the why. That's why we study these animals. That's why we use this equipment. And that's why we spend the time developing new and trying to answer these questions.
And it's so, so important. You're so right. So it's amazing all this work that scientists are doing. We have questions. Sophie, who's 2.5, was asking, she's saying, I love sharks. How can we help save the sharks?
So there's a lot of things that you can do. We just had Earth Day, right? So people are talking about plastic pollution and marine debris and climate change. These are things that we can work with. So using less plastic. I know it's tricky right now. The stores might not let you use your canvas bag, or a lot of things aren't open, or bringing your own cups and things. But when we resume some version of normal, yeah, using less plastic, using reusable, silverware if you're eating out, that coffee cup, that water bottle, those canvas bags. If you love straws, plastic, metal or bamboo. I have a cool metal straw with sharks on it. Amazing. But also as kids, talk about sharks. Learn the facts. Maybe you learned something cool today, or if you saw a species you want to learn more about, dive in, do some research, create a poster, make a video, write a poem, sing a song, create a piece of art, teach your family, your friends. When you go back to school, maybe you can do a project with your class. And also just being aware of where shark products are found. I think a lot of times people don't realize catch of the day, whitefish, shark is mislabeled. It's called other things. And so being aware of the seafood you're eating. You've heard people talk about sustainable choices with seafood. If you eat seafood, where was it caught? Where did it come from? Is there bycatch? Is it actually what you think it is? A lot of things are, like I said, mislabeled, not just shark. And so I think, the biggest thing for all of us is they're not monsters. So educating ourselves and kind of then sharing that information with other people. They're not monster, killer, man-eaters. And the more that message we can spread, if you're a diver and you go diving with sharks and take photos, put them on your social media, share those images, share that experience, encourage your friends to go diving. It might not seem like it makes a difference, but it really does. And each action we're taking to be a positive voice for sharks, the more people around the world, people in our communities are then a voice for sharks. And we vote differently, we make sustainable choices, we're responsible consumers, and that makes a huge impact.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's a perfect message to finish today's session. So thank you so much. It is so, so important. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all that amazing expertise in images and videos. For all of you that are watching, thank you for your questions. I know we got a ton of questions. They keep on coming. So thank you so much for tuning in. We do have one other session next week. Again, Wednesday at 2 p.m. with Dr. Rindy Anderson and Dr. Kate Detwiller from Florida Atlantic University. They're going to be talking also about animals. They're going to be talking about birds and monkeys. So we did sharks this week, birds and monkeys next week. For all of you that love sharks and want to keep learning about sharks, please check out Sharks4Kids. And then also, if you want just a soothing, relaxing moment, you can also check our Frost Science at Home live webcam that is showing a video all the time about our Gulf Stream exhibit, where you can see those hammerhead and silky sharks. If you'd also like to continue looking and seeing what other programs we have, please check our website. And if you'd like to continue supporting our conservation initiatives, please check frostscience.org/donate. Jillian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and for everybody that watched. And yeah, make sure you check out sharks4kids.com. We're always happy to answer questions, lots of fun activities. So keep diving in with us. And thank you so much, guys, for joining. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.